It is such an honor and a privilege today to be actually interviewing my first role model, idol, rock star in dentistry, Jennifer D. St. George. You probably don't remember this because you gave a million lectures, but it was 1987. I just opened my practice, and I live in Phoenix, and 90 miles away is Tucson. And all my older friends in the AGD that had their fellowships and masterships were telling me, they go, man, you're a young kid. If I would have listened to Jenny, instead of developing all these bad practices and all these bad habits, you need to go there and start on the right foot. I packed up all my staff. Jan was in the front seat. We all drove down there and we sat in the front row. And it just seems like yesterday. And I swear to God, Jan is still with me 28 years later. And I still hear her talking to the younger associates. And she's sitting there with her, her shoulders back and saying, Jennifer D. St. George told me 30 years ago to blah, 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 blah. And you were, my God, we talked all the way back 90 minutes. You fired us up. And then probably over the years, we saw you half a dozen more times. And thank you so much for that, because when we came out of school back in 87, we studied math, algebra, and physics and chemistry and all this crap that I've never used. I mean, every single day, I never used 80% of all the stuff I ever learned. And then the first week I had to make payroll, and we're like, what?
Right.
What? I mean, they couldn't even show us a pegboard. I mean, we didn't know anything. And you gave us focus, and you gave us light, and you gave us goals. And if there's anything I can tell, these podcasts are being devoured the most by kids under 30. I mean, if you're under 30, you just podcast. And and if you're 53 like me, they don't even know what a podcast is. And it's hard to even teach them how to do it and all this stuff. And I'm telling you, kids, you don't want to be a horrible golfer for 10 years and then start taking lessons, because it's so hard. And I'll give you a classic example. You start not having a payment policy, and you do that for a year. And then you go, and then you find out how dumb that was. And then you start doing it correctly. And what are all the patients going to say? Well, that's not the way you did it last time. And if you're going to do anything smart, it's you take all this information the first day out of school. You want to take 300 to 500 hours of CE the first year you get out of school, not when you're 60 years old trying to fix up your practice before you sell it when you're 70. I mean, so I'm rambling too much. Jennifer, thank you so much for gracing me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And Howard, thank you for your most gracious remarks. And thank you also for the support you've given me over the years. If I could just make one comment about what you just said, the most important thing you said, and we're talking about the kids under 30, and I realize I can't call them the guys because over 50% of them are women. We never have time to go back and redo stuff when we get busy. The time to put the structure in place is when we are not busy, because we can never get that time back. So you're exactly right. If we start doing something the wrong way, like playing golf for 10 years, you have to unlearn the bad stuff before you can replace it with the good stuff. Very, very stressful. So for the young kids listening, what you just said, if they took nothing else away today, that is a takeaway for a new practice or a new dentist.
So what do you, I want to ask you first, do you think the dental schools are any better at teaching kids management and marketing today in 2015 graduates than they were in 1987 when I got out?
Well, the answer is no. My former husband graduated from PNS. The last year it was PNS, College of Physicians and Surgeons, and he graduated in the class of 67 before it became UOP, which was the class of 68. When Edmund graduated, Howard, the class started with 134 dental students enrolled. 2 weeks before graduation, they were still kicking the guys out. They graduated 34 of the 135. In order to graduate, the patients had to have their bills totally paid up. The way they taught the dentist in the last year of PNS is that the student got the patient to pay them, and the student paid the school. So the students learn very quickly to communicate and to marry the benefits of the dentistry to the cost. The patient paid the student went to the school. So 3 weeks before graduation, the graduating students got a bill. This is how much your patients owe us. You've not collected the money. So not only, Howard, did they go and get an equipment loan and a loan to live for the next year or whatever, many of them were financing 60, 70, 80,000, whatever it was, of past due patient bills. So they learned very quickly on day one there was a business side. I doubt today, that's even brought into the equation.
So how talk about what you mean when you say that marketing and management have to work as one.
Okay, I devised that term over 30 years ago, and it's more appropriate today, in my opinion, Howard, than it's ever been in the past. I talk about the marriage of marketing and management. Now, when I came into dentistry with no dental background and started picking up the phone, we had more patients in California than we knew what to do with. So through certainly all the 70s, we ran what I'm going to call is a horrible expression, which is a cash practice. And that basically is if they had the money, we saw them. If they didn't have the money, we waited till they had the money. So really, we didn't have to spend a lot of time thinking about marketing. We opened the door. They were in the parking lot waiting for us. Today, we have 35,000 dentists in California. And the day of just sitting there and not marketing, those days have gone. So the first part of the equation is we have to market. But Howard, when I look at the websites today, and I look at social media, and I look at search engine optimization, and I look at some of these reminder services dentists are using to remind them of their appointment and all that stuff, there's not much point investing in that service and that marketing approach if I have Attila the Hun on the phone who in 2 or 3 sentences cuts them off at the pass. I was talking to a dentist the other day, and he talked about the very high no-show rate he's having on new patient exams. Well, I come from the school that says, and I'm on record for saying this forever, I believe that a dentist should have 100% show rate on a new patient exam. The patient had a problem, or they saw a neighbor had a problem and they didn't want the same problem. Unsolicited, they picked up the phone or they booked the appointment on the web, depending on the way the office is set up. Why would they not turn up? My sense is that 9 times out of 10, it's the way that initial phone call was handled. So when I talk about the marriage of marketing and management, marketing brings them to the front door or brings them to the telephone or brings them to the website and the email. But unless you can manage them from a customer service and from a management perspective, the practice will not make it.
You know what I think is hilarious? When you're on Dental Town and you go to the, we don't market the forums for political, or, the forum on politics or religion is not on today's exact topics. You have to go to leisure, and then you go to politics, and then it says do not enter if easily offended. But it's so funny how these dentists are all anti-government, and they just can't find anything right with any political party. But as a consumer, when you go around America, the only 2 places with 0 customer service is healthcare and government. So for me to see a doctor bad-mouthing the government, it's like, are you kidding me? Any sector. I mean, 7-Eleven and Circle K probably has a nicer, friendlier person behind the cash register than any doctor I go to in town. I mean, any doctor you go to in town, it's like, sign here. They don't make eye contact. I mean, they treat you like you're almost a wasp or a bee or a cockroach. I go pick up my friends for lunch, and their receptionist, I can stand there for 5 minutes before she even acknowledges that I exist. I mean, you only see that in healthcare and government. Do you agree with that or not agree?
Well, if I could sub-categorize it a little bit, I like to talk about physicians and dentists because I find the physicians on customer service, generalization, maybe 2 out of 10, I think most dentists try. They may, some succeed. I live 5 minutes from Stanford University and Stanford Hospital. That's probably one of the top 5 hospitals in the world. Excuse me, in the States, not the world. And I noticed last month they had started TV advertising on the local stations, focusing on customer service and listening to patients. And I found that interesting that even Stanford, with all its millions, has finally realized that if bodies stop walking through the door, they will not have a business. So there's obviously been a complete change in the environment and a focus on that concept.
Yeah, it is amazing because we're out here in Phoenix, which has the Mayo Clinic over in Scottsdale, and Cancer Centers of America is getting a ton of business because they're focusing on all the soft stuff. And here's Mayo and all these Stanfords and John Hopkins just think, well, we're the best, so you'll come here. It's like, well, not really. Not really. I mean, if you're better on the soft stuff, if you're better on the greeting, the touchy-feely, all that stuff, they're going to get more patients.
But Howard, if I may again separate physicians and dentists, when you have a dental emergency, you don't negotiate with the dentist, you need to be seen. How much of dentistry is emergency pain-based? The minority, not the majority. When you're going to see a physician or a hospital and you are ill or you've broken your leg or you're having a heart attack, this is not elective, which in my opinion is why dentists have to be so far superior in their communication skills, because they're getting the patient to buy with discretionary income. And it's a contest for the patient. Do I go to Hawaii or do I have perio, things hurting and nothing's bleeding, but doctor says I need to do it? So the mindset, in my opinion, for physicians and dentists is very different in how they approach the patient.
So what do you think of all these patient appointment reminder services? I mean, there's a lot of them out there.
Bottom line, they're driving me crazy. It's been very interesting because in the last few weeks, I've actually had to change my dentist after 40 years because Edmund has sold his practice. I've had some medical issues I just need to get tests and some second opinions on. So I have been fascinated going into the hospitals, going in to get the blood tests, going into the different medical and dental offices, because I'm wearing the hat as a patient, but I'm also wearing the hat with my background. And I was in a dental practice recently, and I won't say the service that they're using. I got reminded twice the day before. I got reminded twice the day of. The second reminder was when I was already sitting in the office. I had not left the office and got to my car before this service was asking me for a referral to other patients. Nobody seems to customize the verbiage or how these are going out. So I could most probably speak for an hour on, in my opinion. Let me take Stanford Hospital. I got a call from Stanford last week. Howard, this is exactly what they say on their telephone confirmation call. We're calling to confirm, which, by the way, it's a reconfirm. As far as I knew, it was confirmed. We're calling to confirm your appointment tomorrow at 4:30 with Dr. Smith. If you wish to cancel, hit 1. If you plan on attending, hit 2. And they wonder why they have high no-show rates. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense.
So what would you recommend that they say?
My recommendation today in 2015, Howard, is what it would be from the day I got up on stage, and it's this. Every patient coming into a dental practice, I don't care if it's a group practice, solo practitioner, they have the exam, they have the consultation. I don't call it a case presentation. I hate that. They're not a number, they're not a case. It is a consultation. The consultation, Howard, has 3 components. The clinical, what was diagnosed, what needs to be done, options, pros and cons, decisions made, option number 1. The second component is money. What's it going to cost? What financial option does the practice offer? Which does the patient accept? And the last component, which only people who take my programs understand, is the third component of a consultation with the new patient has to do with management. Do you confirm? Do you not confirm? What's your no-show policy? Do you take the assignment? Do you not take the assignment? If the patient is a minor, is the bill going to be paid for by dad in Arizona or mom who walked through the door? So there are 5 or 6 points which need to be covered. And if you'd like me to do it, I'd be happy to give you the verbal skills. This is what I feel. That a staff member, not the dentist, a staff member looks at Mrs. New Patient who said yes to the treatment, yes to the money, putting it on care credit or wherever it's going. She has no stress on the treatment and the money. So I looked at all our patients and I'd say, Mrs. New Patient, sumptive close, Howard. In our practice, we do not confirm appointments. That's a statement. Then I always explain to a patient why I have that philosophy, because if you don't, they're going to say why. So without pausing for breath, I say the majority of our patients are prepared to take responsibility for keeping their own appointments. And the secret to this is to pause. And for those of you who've been to any of my programs or listened to them on CDs, there is a word, and it's called pause. It's in capital letters, it's capped, it's underlined, and it says pause for 3 to 4 seconds. If the patient is a busy person, they say, fine, hate my appointments being confirmed. But if the patient says, I need that confirmation service, I say, wonderful. It is our pleasure to offer you that special service. How would you like it? Text, phone call, email, fax, whatever. And now you're chasing around the 15% who want it, and you're not upsetting the 85% who don't want it. Howard, I have friends who are busy physicians and busy attorneys. They repeatedly ask their dentist to stop confirming appointments. And the dentists have been known to say, yes, I listened to Jenny and she tells me I should be off, but I'm too scared to do it. It's not a staff issue, it's a dentist issue. And if you talk to the staff who confirm appointments, they will admit it, that when they call to say, hi, I'm Jenny, I'm just calling you to remind you of your appointment with Dr. D. St. George tomorrow. There's a 50% chance, Howard, the patient's going to say, I'm so glad you called. I've been meaning to call you for the last couple of days. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. If we weren't on the phone, they would have kept the appointment because they would have been embarrassed to cancel short notice. So I keep saying to these medical people and these dental people, can I put something in the system so I am not confirmed? Your appointment is in my appointment book in red. If I do not turn up, I was killed on the freeway driving to you. They have no idea how to use their system. There is no training. So I think automation is wonderful, but if it is not personalized, I'm just trying to think. Bert Press, boy, Bert Press and I went back many, many years. Bert Press had this.
How's he doing?
I haven't talked to him for a long time.
He's in Oregon, right?
I don't know.
Corvallis, Oregon, I think.
I don't know. But Bert, years ago, came out talking about the need to, high-tech soft touch. That's what he called it, was the need to customize and personalize technology. It's the same with taking assignment of benefits or sending out statements. There is no customization. There is no acknowledgement on the statement of what the patient told the financial person when they set it up. And I think with such lack of individuality, I think that the dentist just loses that edge.
Well, Jenny, You know, in 1900, healthcare was 1% of the GDP. By 2000, it was 14%. By 2010, by today, it's 17 cents of every dollar in healthcare spent. Yet you
Yeah.
go into the medical schools, and they don't teach any business finance. And then you go to the state meetings, and if you have a meeting on cost, money, finance, scheduling, whatever, they don't even want those speakers. And a lot of states, almost most states, won't even accept those as credits. How can you have a ballooning healthcare cost that's literally paralyzing the 20 richest countries in the world, while you still have state dental meetings who won't even don't even want speakers to talk on it and won't even take credit for practice management hours? I mean, does that make any sense to you?
Well, let's see now. How
But
long
but
do you,
but but they got time to teach you algebra, trig, and gold foils.
right. In November of 2012, Damon Adams from Dentistry Today invited me, and I was very honored to write for the, in my opinion, what is it called? That the guest page in Dentistry Today. And I did the whole 1,800 words on the very subject you're talking about. Why is management not in dental schools? Why is it not on the big programs? And I'm going to make a comment. It is
Or recognized by any state boards.
exactly. And I'm going to make a comment now, which is not politically correct, but I'm going to make it anyway. When I go to many of the state meetings now, I am seeing subjects like myself and Kathy Jameson that we would normally speak on being taught by a DDS or a DMD so they can get CE credit. I sat in 3 programs recently, I won't say which state, on social media, given by dentists who had obviously taken a course on it, but I didn't find it practical. So I was pleased that it was acknowledged. Now, when I started in California, 50% was class 1 for clinical, and 50% of your CE could be in practice management, which was class 2. Then California took it out completely, and now they brought it back as long as the copy is written so that the state perceives there is a benefit to patients. There is nothing in management that is not a benefit to patient, and that one even has to quibble it about it, and you're 100% correct. So when I talk to the meeting planners, they say, well, the guys come in and they want 3 crash days or 2 crash days. They want to get their 55 units in 2 days so they don't have to worry about it. So management is not there. So now we have clinically brilliant Einsteins being embezzled, because embezzlement is even worse than I thought. Don Lewis, who is, the go-to guy on embezzlement, oral surgeon from Cleveland, Ohio, has always shared with me embezzlement in dentistry is 1 out of 4, vets 1 out of 2, medical 1 out of 5. From the horror stories I've heard in the last few months, I'm going to say dental is maybe 1 out of 3. So we've got beautifully trained dentists who have no idea how to set up systems, but more importantly, how to monitor.
That's funny that you just said that, because today's paper. What was the first thing? The first thing I saw here I can find it. And anyway, basically, a lady in Texas just got sentenced for 5 years for embezzling $200,000 from her dentist in Texas, and the dentist in Texas said he had no idea. I mean, you just hear this. I mean, you can't go a week on social media without some dentist getting busted for this. So, Jenny, I want to ask you a question from 30,000 feet, because you and I have been in this sector for decades. When I got out of school, 9 out of 10 dentists just started a practice from scratch. Your husband started a practice from scratch. Now that is rare. I mean, that is just the outlier. And so what's changed between us all just graduating and renting 2,000 square feet and getting some plumbing done and starting a scratch practice? Why do you think it's gone from 90% just go scratch, and now it's probably down to 10%? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so when Edmund graduated from dental school, 5% went into graduate or into the military, 95% went on their own. The figures I have been looking at for the last few years, you're exactly right, have been reversed. 95% go into some sort of relationship. Now, I'm not a dentist. I have no clinical background, so I can only make this story really personal, so I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. Edmund always told me when he graduated, there was nothing that could walk through the door that he did not feel prepared to handle. So the old P&S was down in the Mission District, which in San Francisco was not a place maybe you'd walk down at night. But it meant that the dental IQ was low. So the patients who walked in from the streets genuinely brought in every problem you could think of and a whole lot that you hadn't even thought of. Then they moved the school up to Pacific Heights into the super area, and the patients walking in aren't the same kind of patients. And now they've moved the school back to the Mission District. Why did they move it in the first place? I don't get it. So there was a confidence that I saw in Edmund's class and dentists of that era that I'm not sure that I see there now. I mean, you know, I'm only quoting Edmund because it's important that my facts be accurate, but they also, I can't speak for other people. But I think he had to make, I don't know, 26 sets of dentures. When he made a denture, the patient couldn't get it out. He had to teach them how to get it out. The other thing is that, no, the management was never involved. And when I worked with Jim Pride, good for Jim and I, went back many years. He, of course, is no longer with us.
I could never figure out if he was a dentist or a winery. If you had dinner with him, it'd be 30 minutes of dentistry and 30 minutes about his vineyard.
Yeah, he was a dentist, but he was the associate dean at UOP. And I met him, and I'll tell you this story one day offline, but I met him one day and he said, come and talk to me. So I went and talked to him and he said, I am so passionate that you're passionate. I'm going to give you Monday morning at 8 for the final year. He said, nobody will turn up. He said, nobody walks into dental school at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning because they've all been out carousing all weekend. We're lucky if they turn up by 11, but at least I tried. I had the last 3 months of the graduating class, everybody was there at 8 o'clock in the morning. The other school in San Francisco, Cal, heard about it. Their dean wouldn't do it. They took money out of their pocket and they asked Jim and I to go on a Wednesday evening and teach them management that they weren't getting in their dental school. Jim and I went, and of course we didn't take any of the money. There was an acknowledgement then that management was important. However, in fairness to today's dentists, Howard, I've had so many conversations with deans, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to say. You say to the dean, why is management not included? And this is what they say. We don't have any time in the schedule and the guys don't want it anyway. You go and talk to the students, they're crying out for it. Now, the dental schools in the UK a few years ago took dentistry in the dental schools from 4 years to 5 years. So they could teach communication and all that stuff that they couldn't fit in the 4 years. That's how important. And I also believe that the graduating students must intern with a couple of practices to get hands-on experience before they go out into the marketplace. And I think the American schools, in my opinion, should be looking at that kind of format.
So, Jenny, you were actually born in London, weren't you, in the United Kingdom?
I was born in the north of England. I'm from Lancashire, where the Beatles come from.
From the Beatles? Don't you think the dentistry in England has changed more than any other country in our lifetime? I mean, it seems like when I got out of school, most worked for the government NHS.
Correct.
And now, 30 years later, it looks like about a third of them no longer participate with that. I mean, it's...
if you divided England to the south of England, the north of England, and Scotland, so you've got the bottom half, the middle half, and the top half, 99% of all dentists in the south of England have gone private.
99%?
Yes, and have been that way. Now, the only thing that they do which costs them money, but that is their commitment, is they will take kids to the age of, and I want to say it's 16, under the NHS program. So they will take the kids because they feel very strongly the kids should not be compromised because of a family financial issue. So they will take the kids on the government program, and then when they move into their late teens, then they become private. There are a few dentists who do national health. When you get to Scotland, Howard, the majority are going to be on the NHS system.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I find walking around London, it's, I spoke to the American, let me see if I can get this name correct, the American Society, the Society of American Trained Dentists. I've got the words wrong. It's about 80 dentists from England who have taken a 2-year course in the States to get their DDS degree or DMD and then go back and practice in the US. When I'm in Paris, you will walk down the Champs-Élysées and you will see a brass plate with the French qualification, and then you'll see a DDS or a DMD. So they came to the States to get their education and they went back. So I would say in Europe, there's a bigger gulf than in the States. I mean, you see some of the best dentistry in the world and you're going to see some of the worst. Whereas I think most probably in the States, it's not discussing state by state, but overall, it's most probably of a much more even approach.
Well, what are your thoughts about understanding the UK NHS and how that's morphed over the last 3 years when you keep seeing newspaper articles, even in your state of California, where they'll complain that, so few dentists participate in their state Medicaid program. But then the dentists are saying, yeah, but your fee schedule is only 30% of our usual and customary fees, and their overhead is 65%. I mean, the dentists are saying, if I participate, for every dollar I collect on state Medicaid, I will lose $1. And I don't have the dollars to lose. So what would you tell? I mean, what are your thoughts of when you have 65% overhead and state Medicaid wants to pay you 30% of your usual and customary fee?
Your timing is just amazing. I was driving in the car just last week, and the announcement on the news is that the California Medi-Cal has just increased the reimbursement to the dentists because they have patients and nobody can find a dentist who works with Medi-Cal. And so I would say that states, who am I to tell the dental societies what to do, but it seems to me that each state dental association, I'm sure CDA in California was very instrumental in Sacramento, pointing out the point you've just made, is that a dentist today with an overhead of 60, 65% cannot afford to lose $100 an hour seeing a Medi-Cal patient. So they have just increased the fees.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, why should the dentist be a volunteer when they graduated $300,000 of student loans, and then how can I give them state-of-the-art dentistry and lose $100 an hour? I mean, it's kind of a fairy tale. So I want to ask you another question at 30,000 feet, a macroeconomic questions. When I got out of school in '87 and saw you, Lazarus out of New Orleans had taken Orthodontic Centers of America all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. All the orthodontists were saying it was the end of private service. They would all be working for him. He actually started building his own ortho schools in Colorado, and all the orthodontists, the sky was falling and it was game over. And then it just and there was a dozen companies on NASDAQ, and they all imploded. They all fell apart. They were all gone for 10 years. Now they're all back. Are they back to stay? Are they different, or are they not going away? What do you think of the rise of like the Heartlands, the Pacific Dental Cares, the Aspens, there's probably, I think the last list I saw, there's about 50 corporate chains that are in more than one state.
Right. And what did I read? Target, I read this week or last week, Target is going to start going towards that way. I was talking to somebody, it was a confidential conversation, so I can't say too much, but he was sharing with me the potential business plan of Heartland. It is unbelievable. I have not delved in. I mean, when the Heartlands of this world started many years ago, I actually called them up because I sort of wanted to get in on the ground floor because I felt, and I don't know if this is Heartland, but certainly when you and I are talking many years ago, there were business people from Wall Street starting these places. So I was, forward enough to call up and say, I want to be in on the ground floor. So when you create the structure, it is practical. Because my concern, Howard, is, and I don't know how it is now, but my concern is they attracted the dentist who does not want to worry about the management or the staff. And let's kid ourselves, that's about 98% of dentists. If dentists knew before they went to dental school all the crap they'd have to handle, which is non-dental in the practice, half of them would not go to dental school. So I always felt that these corporations would attract the dentists who wanted to focus on the clinical expertise and not worry about the management. So my question is how good is the management? Now, I don't know how good the clinical is. That's not my realm of expertise. I've done some research and I've looked at some structure and it seems to be pretty good. But, I would like to think there will always be room for a private dentist. Now, when I attended the meeting the other day to which I was an invited guest, I ran into a gentleman. He remembered me from 35 years ago. And he said that money is now on the table from the bank he's with to help the students out of the San Francisco 2 dental schools begin to start a scratch practice again. Because most of the guys coming out owe, $250,000 on a school loan, and then what are they going to do? Take out, I don't know, $125,000 per treatment room. I mean, that's $500,000 before they've even seen the first patient. They most probably don't have a line of credit. I'll tell you a story for those younger dentists who are listening. This is called WEEP. When Emma graduated in '67, we went to Crocker Bank. The loan officer for dentists was called Mr. Malzberger. We signed a loan to start 770 square feet with 3 treatment rooms, of which we were going to equip 2. We didn't sleep that night because the loan was $25,000. And he looked at us and he said, well, you're not going to make any money, so why don't I just put another 10 or 15,000 in a bank account so you don't have to worry. We had 2 used wedding rings and a used VW. That was our collateral. After 2 months, I called him up. I said, I need more money to buy equipment. I'm opening the 3rd room for hygiene. That was after 8 weeks. Excuse me, after 4 months, 16 weeks. And he looked at me and he said, there'd be no dentists in California who've ever gone bankrupt. I doubt you're going to be the first one. Good luck. Those days have gone. If I were to sum up what's going through my head, I've always said that when a dentist wants to move into a practice, whether it's to buy a practice or be an employee to become an owner down the way, or whether to associate Howard for 2 or 3 years to get the knowledge they need to open their own, please go into the appointment with the dentist a couple of hours ahead. Sit in the reception room. Say the traffic was not as bad. Be a fly on the wall. Watch the staff. Listen to the phones. If the verbal skills are not good, we don't take welfare. Doctor's office, what do you want? No, we don't have time today. He or she cannot go in and change it. And if they don't change it, they're just going to have a bad role model. So I realize that the practice brokers are looking at the equipment and they're looking at the AR and they're looking at the, the goodwill of the practice, but they really, most probably, I don't know this firsthand, don't go into the management the way some of the consultants do. I mean, I believe any dentist buying a practice needs to have a management consultant really do an audit on the management, not just on the charts, but on the philosophy.
Well, I think it's funny that when you look at a balance sheet, only a bean counter accountant could come up with a valuation and practice. They're sitting there giving me the value of a dental chair, and you have two practices, and one's got five staff members, and they all been there 20 years, and the other one's got five staff members that all been there 2 years or less, and this does not show up on the balance sheet.
Correct.
But they'll depreciate a stupid dental chair for me. I mean, it's just crazy. Jenny, so I want to talk about the most frustrating thing to me, and see if you can address it.
Okay.
All my friends that are my age, 50 to 60, that have $1 million practices and making bank, we all have a long history of bringing in all kinds of consultants, because we always know if we give guys like you a buck, by the end of the year, we're going to get our buck back and some change. And you take people like one of the most successful practices I've ever seen. He's had a consultant every single year for 38 years, a different one. He tries every different one because he sees them as a cafeteria. He's never had one that didn't teach him something. And so everybody that uses consultants like you, we're just fine tuning, inching up, going up a stairway for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But the people who you would just be God, you would just, the people who need you the most never ask you for help. Why is that in dentistry, that the dentist that could just avoid a suicide and the people that would save their family, the ones that you would just be a miracle worker on, won't call you. And then everybody that calls you is already successful and just wants to get even a little better every year. Do you get where I'm going?
Right. And let me just clarify something. I am not a dental consultant. I do not go into practices and consult on site.
Well, you will if they say Howard sent you.
No. Now, when I had my large corporation, yes, I had 8 full-time consultants who literally went around the country, and that's what they did. My passion is creating programs, being on stage, creating audio programs, doing webinars, kicking butt, and getting people motivated, and getting the verbal skills right, and getting them on the right path. And I love it, and I work with several consultants who are the ones who go in. Now, if I took 100 dentists, there are most probably 10%, Howard, who will take what they hear in, say, a Jenny seminar and run with it. There are at least 10% to 15% who will sit in the room and basically say, this is crap, but I got my CE credit, whatever. The rest, in my opinion, genuinely want to make the change. But one of the issues, and I talk about this because I understand it, I'm always explaining to people I'm a recovering perfectionist. Dentists are perfectionists. Dentists drive their spouses crazy, they drive their staff crazy, they drive their supply detail people crazy, because in an effort to make no mistake, they keep procrastinating. I talked to a psychologist many years ago, Howard, and he told me that dentists were the most independent of any profession he had ever worked with. So when you have a perfectionist who sets very high standards of themselves, never mind what they do of other people, I think it is hard for many perfectionists to ask for help.
The only person, dentist, I love my profession the most because all my friends, I've spent the night in 100 dentist homes, and every one of them has several hundred nonfiction books. It's pretty cool when you get a job and everybody there's got 8 years of college and is a big reader, and any subject you jump into, they're well read. I love my group, but the number one profession they remind me of is just a cowboy on his own horse, does everything by himself, won't listen to anybody, has his own gun.
Yeah, and the psychiatrist told me that as far as he was aware, many dentists could be brilliant brain surgeons. He said, these are some of the brightest guys I've ever met. But he said, if you think they can put up with politics in a hospital for more than 5 minutes, he said they won't do it. He said they want to be king of their own castle, or for a female, queen of her own castle. They do not want to be bossed around by other people. So by the time many of them, and you obviously would need to ask this, of a consultant, But from my perspective, by the time they pick up the phone to the consultant, they are really looking, they're almost past help. They're just looking for somebody to come in and make it happen for them, which is why to be a consultant is most probably to be a therapist first and get into their head and get that sorted out. And when the head is sorted out, the stuff flows. But if they're fighting the stuff with some head trip, keep the money.
I always said I would never do in-office dental consulting because every time someone paid me to go in there, I would just listen to this first. Like, are you kidding me? And I thought they all needed Dr. Phil, not Dr. Farran. And I always thought if you want to be a dental consultant, you should go hang out with Dr. Phil for 10 years. Because once you get their head to see things in a business site, I mean, success is very counterintuitive. You're hardwired to be the 400-pound gorilla, and you got to delegate. Correct. You got to let your assistants talk. You let your hygienist talk. I mean, everything that makes you successful in dentistry is the opposite of how you're hardwired at birth. You can't be
correct.
Yeah, I mean, name one gorilla in the Congo today that's letting all the little gorillas run the tribe. I mean, that's just not how it works. And you got literally a million years of evolution beating your chest and keeping everyone suppressed. And the dentists that go in there and build a great team. So Jenny, we're already I only got you for 13 more minutes, and so I want to go right into that hard stuff. Every time I've seen an office go from the bottom stair, up a stair, up 2 stairs, 3 stairs, it's always getting the staff on board. It's always having a rocking high. The luckiest, the reason your ex-husband, was so successful is because he had you at the front desk. Talk to these dentists about the staff. What's the low-hanging fruit on getting a dynamic wow staff that can talk to the patient on the phone, that talks when they walk in, that knows how to communicate and talk about clinical dentistry and money? What's the low-hanging fruit?
Okay.
Because here's what I see, and I'm in a lot of offices, just with my buddies, just hanging out as friends. After a root canal, 100% of the time, they go back in their office and shut the door. And then they get beeped to another room. They go in there and they do a hygiene. And then, I mean, you can be in their office 8 hours in a day. And I mean, they're either in a mouth or in their room with the door shut. And then their staff always says things to me like, well, can you ask him this? Or can you ask him? And I'm like, what do you mean can I? Who is your leader? I'm his friend who stops by every once in a while. How can you get through? You're talking to about 7,000 dentists commuting to work. Talk to them about staff.
Okay. While I'm known for, teaching verbal skills on scheduling and money and all that, the number one subject I love talking about is talking to dentists and their spouses about how to hire and maintain quality staff. So for those people, and of course I didn't know where this interview was going to go, so I'm just going to pick out certain key things. Number one, a dentist must hire to their limitations, not their strengths. Now, I never talk about weaknesses, I talk about a limitation. So when you've written the job description, it needs to acknowledge what anyone's limitation is. Now, so many dentists are perfectionists, so they tend to gravitate towards perfectionist type staff. Now we've got everybody paralyzed. Secondly, I have maintained this for years. Hire for the front desk outside dentistry. Hotels, restaurants, coffee shops, airlines, travel agents, and retail. I do not need anybody coming into the front office with clinical background. I have a program available actually put together by a friend of mine. It's called Welcome to Dentistry. They only have to listen to it twice, and they know, as long as they know more than the patient. What I want, a mature staff with verbal skills on how to handle patients. I was in Toronto many years ago, and I got on my soapbox about this, and there was a very elegant dentist. And at the end of the day, he came to me and he said, Jenny, I listened to what you said. So at lunch, I went across the street to the Ritz-Carlton, and I just had the concierge right off the floor. I love concierges. They're underpaid. and they don't know what the word no is. I'm not quite sure about that. Give me 10 minutes and I'll get the answer. I've had dentists call and tell me they took somebody off first class in American Airlines. I've lived on American Airlines for over 30 years. I've got over 5 million miles on American. Never yet had anybody that did not give me superb class in first class. I want people who can manage and listen to and communicate with patients. We can teach them the difference between a removable partial and a fixed bridge. So I was in a pedo practice many years ago, Howard, and he was, my late husband was Chinese American, and he was very gregarious, but many of the Asians are quite quiet. He was a pedodontist, very introverted, never took his eyes off the carpet, the floor. He surrounded himself with 7 introverted Asians, never got their eyes off the floor, and then wondered why nobody wanted to bring the kids in. So I never ask a dentist to change their personality. This is very important that people listening understand this. Please don't think I'm asking to change your personality. I'm asking you to perhaps change your management style. So if you don't like talking to the patients, find staff who will talk to the patients. I have a dentist, when I did on-site consulting in Alaska, it was impossible for him, and I always say, you never talk money at the chair, never talk money at the chair. Two exceptions, emergencies and a change of treatment. Because with informed consent, you cannot continue with those 2 procedures without a financial informed consent. This man could not mention money at the chair. So there was an agreement. An emergency or a change of treatment. He left. Susie came in from the front, sat in his chair, took care of everything. She walked out. He walked in as if nothing had happened. Everybody's needs were met. I didn't force him to discuss money. I said, you don't want to do it? We'll find somebody who does. The other thing, this is a perfectionist, and I see this happening all the time. Dentists get frustrated because they feel they can't delegate because they did it once 10 years ago and somebody made a mistake, so they're not going to do it again. So then I have actually sent dentists consultant-type employees that could run a $4 million a year company. This marvelous goddess makes a decision without discussing it with doctor. In this particular case I'm thinking of, Sandy reordered the business cards without asking doctor's permission. He lost it. She walked out. So the perfectionist in him finds it hard to delegate. So they end up not with executive staff, Howard, but they end up with the more immature staff who will take that crap, honestly, because the mature staff who in fact would carry the burden for the dentist and be a partner cannot work in that environment. Now, this is all very generalistic and very simplistic, but there's a lot of truth in making stereotype comments sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, you've given 1,000 programs in 5 continents. I assume one of the continents you didn't lecture in was Antarctica. What was the other one?
What am I missing? Is there the North Pole and South Pole? What am I missing?
Well,
I actually
North and South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica.
Then maybe I've been on 6.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. You've been on 6. I assumed you didn't lecture to any penguins, no. But I couldn't think of a continent that I haven't seen you list on.
See, that was the perfectionist in you picking it up. Thank you, Howard.
And so how can, if someone wants you to speak at their next dental meeting, their study club, their whatever, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, I'd love it. My 800 number is 800-393-2207. And an email, honestly, my personal email, Jenny, Jenny, at JdSG, those are my initials, Jennifer D. St. George, Jenny at JdSG.com.
It's 12:30.
What is that name, D. St. George? Is that British?
No, it's actually French. Edmund was from Paris, so it's de Saint-Georges. So we say de Saint George in the US, and when I go home to Europe, it's de Saint-Georges.
That sounds very romantic, like a perfume. Say it again one more time.
De Saint-Georges.
I couldn't repeat that if you put a gun to my head, but it
And I
sounds
was
nice.
talking to my former sister-in-law this morning, actually, and her surname is Baudouin Sang. She married Baudouin Sangal de Pons. I mean, it makes Smith look.
You have to admit, when you go to I've lectured in 50 countries. When you go to a lot of other countries, the language sounds kind of brutal. But when you go to Paris, you have no idea what they're saying. It does sound like a Michael Jackson song.
It's like music.
Yeah, it is music, and they absolutely no doubt have the prettiest language. Also, you gave me two. You said Don Lewis is the go-to man on embezzlement.
Well, Don Lewis is the only dentist, I believe, in the world who is a certified fraud examiner. So he's brought out a couple of books. I've not seen it, but I understand he with his forensic accounting company, have created a software to detect embezzlement.
Where's he out of?
He's out of Cleveland, Ohio.
Can you introduce us? Can you send him an email and me, Howard at Dentaltown?
Absolutely.
I'd love to have him do a podcast. And also Damon Adams. He's your buddy from Dentistry Today.
Oh, yes.
Tell him I sent him an email that I want to do a podcast with him. I don't know if he saw that and thought, well, you're in a competing magazine, Dentaltown or whatever. I never think of, the thing I think about other magazines and websites, whatever, is the same thing I think about the dentist across the street. We're all on the same team. I tell the dentist across the street, we're all buddies. I say, we compete against cars and TVs and trips to Disneyland. And as far as magazines and websites go, I've never met a dentist who only read one magazine. They all when I was in MBA school, I read The Economist, Fortune, Forbes, Inc. So I think I always think in hope, growth, and abundancy. I don't think in fear and scarcity. But I would love to have Damon on. I think he's a great guy. And yeah, I just think that would be phenomenally great. Jenny, last thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna throw you under a bus. You've never given us an online C course. We put up 350 courses, and they've passed 550,000 views in 206 countries. And I want a course on there, not for all the help it do for all the dentists, just to raise the status image of Dentaltown, to have a course on there from the legend herself. I totally want a course on there from Jenny. If you ever find it in your heart someday to put a course on there, we would love it, and we would tell 300,000 dentists around the world about it.
Your timing is excellent. Let's get together, because I'm just making some changes in my program. So I would love it, Howard. Thank you for the honor.
And the last question, we're at 58 minutes. I got 2 minutes. I want to get your final thoughts close. Is corporate dentistry going to take over like Walgreens took over pharmacy, or do you think it's just going to be a niche market? I mean, we're 10, 15 years from now, or like I've been in here 30 years. 30 years from now, do you think most dentists will be employees, or do you think it'll be a mixture, half and half? I mean, will it be urban versus rural?
Well,
what do you think?
If I was that good of foreseeing things, I'd be a multimillionaire on the stock market. So I can just give you my personal opinion. I've been looking at the UK. Some years ago, Boots, which would be the equivalent of, it was like Sears. No, Boots is like Walgreens, but they tried in England to put these dental centers in some of these large retail, and it didn't work. After a period of time, it didn't work. Now, why it didn't work, I don't know. Also, we're back to the person. It's a subject we have to address. People like you and I need to address it, because we have to be ahead of the curve, and I'm not quite sure where it's going.
Well, I just want you to address my concern. My concern is that same thing going on in the first round, the orthodontic science, whatever. They could never keep a doctor. I mean, it seems like, some of these corporate chains, their average dentist doesn't stay with them for 1 year. So my question to you is, can you be a successful corporate dental chain if you can't keep any of your dentists working with you longer than 12 months?
I don't think so. I really don't. And we have some chains in California. I can think of one particularly. And And they don't even put a dentist name anywhere.
I know.
Ads in the paper, and there's not a single dentist. And I'm thinking, if I were a patient, I'm not going to a building, I'm going to a person. So the answer is, I don't think so. Now, when I look at the UK market, to be in practice alone is also unusual. It's nothing to walk into a practice and see, 17 names on the door. And I just always think, and I know we're running out of time, I just always think there's room in the marketplace for the practice that wants to take the boutique approach. Now, not everybody can do it, and that's the conversation for you and I. I could tell you stories about that. If a dentist is committed to quality and wants to buck the tide and provide quality service in a place which supposedly can't take it, the chances are they'll be very successful.
My son Greg always points me to the data of lawyers who started corporations decades before, and the corporations grew, but they all leveled out. About half the lawyers work in corporates with multiple lawyers, and the other half are all individual. So, and he thinks that's a mature market. So he takes that assumption and goes to dentistry. But we are out of time. We're a minute over time. Again, from the bottom of my heart, and Jan and Lori and Stacy and Christina and all my staff that idolize you for all the help that you put into our practice. I mean, I was 24 years old and I was running 15 different directions, and you gave us order and structure and handout. I still think we still have some of your handouts.
I get
from
that
1987, and you set us straight. Jan and I still think of you as just the one. I mean, you are the North Star for us. And thank you for that. And I would love for you to grace our online CE with your name, just to build our brand to have the Mercedes-Benz herself, Jenny St. George. And if you want to have an outstanding speaker at your meeting, and you want those practices to go back home and get more organized and raise your production and net income, call Jenny. Her number was 800-393-2207, 800-393-2207, or you can email her, Jenny, at JdSG.com, and that stands for JenniferDishwashWing.com. And I'm telling you, she'll be the hit of your meeting, I guarantee you. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Howard, thank you for everything. Bye-bye.